Good morning, good evening to wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to another coffee hour, another finance stream. All right, we got so much to cover today. There was a lot of stuff that did happen over the weekend, specifically with the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. So I have a whole segment dedicated just to that. Then we'll roll into more of the traditional the tech and finance stuff. All right, because I know a lot of people are interested in understanding kind of that conflict at a broader viewpoint or a broader perspective, and how it actually could potentially impact the stock market. So of course we're going to cover that. I'm going to try to keep this stream a little more shorter than usual and a little more concise, especially with the Iran Israel stuff, because I do tend to go on tangents. But we'll be talking about them. We'll be talking about OpenAI. OpenAI is in the news for some very big developments, so we'll be talking about them as well. And then we'll move into kind of the market updates and we'll close it out. All right. So, all right, guys, let's get started. Excuse me. I'm still getting over a cold here. All right. So welcome back to the channel as always. And right now we have the first one up. Okay. And this turned out to already be debunked. Okay. This came out actually, it really came out late Sunday my time or early or late Monday my time, but it turned out to be debunked. Right, it was either some type of fake misinformation or something. But Iran reached out to Arab intermediaries in a bid to de-escalate the conflict with Israel. So like I said, this was already debunked. Al Jazeera refuted the claim, citing two sources who had said Iran had not sent any messages to de-escalate the conflict with Israel. I see we have Coney Finance in the chat. Hey, welcome back. Iran has reportedly been sending signals to Iran or to Israel and the United States through Arab intermediaries as it looks to de-escalate the conflict and resume talks over the nuclear deal. That, of course, like I just mentioned, was fake. Or not entirely true. Could have been a misinformation campaign to throw some stuff off. If you believe in conspiracies, maybe it was a hedge fund, right? Maybe it was a hedge fund that just put this piece out so they could drive the stock market higher. And then, of course, oil prices. But, oil prices actually came down a bit. And then after this article was basically debunked, saying that Al Jazeera, no, that's not true. That's not entirely true. Iran has also said that this is not entirely true. It looked like the stock market ended up still pretty good. Oil started actually increasing in value. Oil futures increased. Earlier, the Wall Street Journal reported that Tehran had reached out to Arab officials and said they would be willing to come back to the table as long as the U.S. does not enter into the attack, the Wall Street Journal reported, citing Middle Eastern and European officials. A senior Iranian official and well-informed regional diplomat rejected the claim that Iran has sent indications to cease hostilities. Al Jazeera journalist Ali Hashem said on social media platform X. Iran has also sent a communication to Israel saying it was best for both sides to keep the violence contained. Isn't that interesting that you have two countries literally firing and lobbing missiles at each other, and they're saying, you know what, let's not include regional partners, let's not include anyone else, let's just keep it between us. And essentially what they're trying to do is keep the United States out of the conflict, because the United States is actually on the way. As a matter of fact, they're probably already there as of the making of this video. They're already there. They had sent a couple Stratofortress tankers. These are huge, massive airplanes that basically fuel jets in flight. And these, Stratofortress tankers were being, what do you call it? Convoyed, I guess, or they were being tailed by a bunch of fighter jets. So very, very interesting that Iran is saying, hey, let's keep the United States out. Let's just make this between us. Of course, Iran has been getting the snot knocked out of them for the last couple of days. But not only that, Israel's taken a bunch of hits as well. So this conflict didn't seem to die down, and it looks like it's going to continue, at least for the foreseeable future, into the next couple of days. I could see if once the United States is actively within the area, within the region, they either, I don't think they're going to have like a whole, naval blockade or anything like that. But once, more United States assets enter the arena, Iran will probably start to back down. They'll try to come to the trade deal, to work out something. This whole thing was because Israel was worried, and with, good evidence supporting this corroboration, that Iran was going to have a nuclear weapon within a couple of months, if not sooner than that. And they were going to give some of their proxy groups access to this technology to these nuclear weapons. So that was obviously not good. So this is why Israel had moved in the way that it did. But this caused a huge event, obviously destabilizing the area, causing a lot of tension. And we can see now what the aftermath is becoming. Is basically Israel is dominating the airspace of Iran, and the United States is looking to enter, probably to back up Israel, to fire down a lot of their missiles that are coming out of Iran, because a lot of these missiles coming from Iran are actually starting to penetrate Israel's defenses, because they don't have enough missiles to take out these incoming ballistic missiles or missiles coming out of Iran. So the United States is positioning a strike group within the area. They have airplanes in the area that are probably help with taking out some of these missiles. So let's move on real quick. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, guys, again, because I know we're a finance channel. I'm trying to keep it as a finance channel. All right. Israel-Iran trade deadly strikes for fourth day with no signs of restraint. Israel has attacked civilian targets in Iran, striking a hospital and Iranian TV buildings, and as intensive strikes exchanged by the two countries raged for a fourth consecutive day, with military confrontations between the longstanding enemies showing no sign of ending. After those attacks late Monday, Iranian state TV reported that a new wave of drone and missile strikes had begun targeting Tel Aviv and Haifa. We'll just scroll right down. All right. The ongoing attack started by Israel on Friday, followed by Iranian retaliatory strikes, pushed the death toll in 4 days of open conflict between the foes to closer to 250. Raised rhetoric emanating from both countries following the exchange of strikes suggested that there is little prospect of the hostilities ending soon, right, with the risk of an escalation into a wider regional conflict. So, of course, the United States is over there. You have several partners in the area that just do not like Iran, but of course they don't want to destabilize the area. You still have the whole, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain. You have them. You have Jordan. You have Egypt. You have all these other countries that would love to see this come to a close. But of course, it really is going to depend on a lot of factors. Israel wants to take out the Iran leadership, right? They've already killed off a bunch of key government personnel, a lot of nuclear scientists. Now they're on record, and actually in public, Netanyahu is on TV saying that he is open to taking out Khomeini, which is the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah. So he's looking to just take him out, right? And then President Trump actually came into the fold and said, no, don't do that. That could create a power vacuum in Iran, which could lead to even further, problems. Think of like something like Syria, civil war, deposed al-Assad or Bashar al-Assad. You had Iraq when Saddam Hussein was ousted, and it just creates these power vacuums in the region. And when that happens, you have all these other special interest groups that try to go in and take over the government, right? Whether they're friendly towards the United States or not, or Western allies or not, or even terrorists, right? Or they support terrorism or whatever. It's never good when a leader is deposed and then it leaves a power vacuum, because then it's up for grabs by anyone. So Trump is in my opinion, the U.S. administration is pretty, that's a pretty smart move, because you don't want to destabilize that whole country. I mean, Iran is, a very big player in that whole region. However, Iran is running out of allies. Okay. They reached out to Russia and they're like, hey, Russia, can you help us out? Russia said, yeah, for sure. Let's get some, I'm sure something happened behind closed doors where, Iran had to give something up to Russia or something like that. And Russia came back and said, hey, we would love to help, so we're going to mediate a ceasefire. They don't want to get involved militarily. They don't want to touch the dumpster fire with a 10-foot pole, because, Russia is involved in Ukraine right now and they have their hands tied. So Russia can't really do much. Iran doesn't have that many allies in the area. So again, they're getting the snot kicked out of them by Israel's Air Force, by Israel's, targeted launches. And not only that, Israel had a bunch of, intelligence cells within Iran launching insider drone attacks. So it's just crazy what is going on over there. All right. So Iran announced it had launched some 100 missiles and pledged further retaliation for Israel's sweeping attacks on its military nuclear infrastructure. Just a point on that nuclear infrastructure, Israel did hit a couple of these nuclear refining plants. And now there's a supposed, radiation leak within the areas of where these plants were hit. So that is definitely not good for Iran. That only compounds the problems that this country is going to have. And I just saw an article. I don't have it on here, but I just saw an article that, the U.S. is telling Tehran citizens, get out. Get out while you can. So I saw some footage that a lot of, the highways are backed up. This has been ongoing since about yesterday. So a lot of, highways are backed up. People are trying to get out of Tehran as fast as possible. The likelihood of the United States getting involved in this conflict is increasing. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say that they start adding in on the bombing campaign. All right. So again, this could destabilize the area. Hopefully it doesn't get to that. Hopefully, Khamenei comes to the table, Netanyahu comes to the table, and a nuclear deal is reached, because that would just be good, right? That would be good. Today, the stock market rallied really hard. It seems retail does not care. It seems the stock market just does not care about what's happening in the Middle East. You have oil futures that was obviously impacted, but outside, again, and I mentioned this on Friday, there's not really all that many trade, there's nothing from Israel or Iran that would really impact the U.S. stock market, not in my opinion, right? There's just not a whole lot of stuff there. Now, if something was happening in, Mexico, Canada, or China, or the UK or the European Union, yeah, there'd probably be some impacts there. There'd be some fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But the Middle East has just been ripe with conflict, so this is just like a nothing burger at the end of the day. But for any of the war buffs out there, I just want to cover this because it is still interesting to cover and see this happening and unfolding. To see a huge country like Iran with a very supposed powerful government just fall to a bunch of airstrikes is wild, right? That is really, really crazy. This is like the David and Goliath that we keep hearing about, David being the smallest country, Israel, just pounding the literal crap out of a massive country like Iran with a huge military and a huge military industrial complex. And they're honestly, in my opinion, they're just kicking the crap out of them. You have Khomeini that's hiding in a bunker, who's the Ayatollah of Iran, the supreme leader. He's hiding in a bunker. Israel launched a missile. They knew beforehand. They knew where he was. They said it publicly, like, look, you can hide in any bunker you want. We know exactly where you are. Iran wanted to play around and find out, and they had a missile land not too far from that bunker within the same city. They know where this guy is hiding. So Khomeini is, and it's in his best interest because I'm sure he wants to keep the regime in power, wants to keep his government in power. It is best for him at this point to come forward, go to the trade talks. However, the government does not want to appear weak in front of their people, right? Especially the people that got them into power during the Iranian Revolutionary War, where they ousted the Shah of Iran. So they want to have this, perception of strong, strong military government, collection against against Israel, but it's not looking that way on the global stage. So there's something interesting here. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refused to rule out the possibility of targeting Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, saying it's not going to escalate the conflict, it's going to end the conflict. Israel has previously suggested the regime change in Iran could be a result or could be one result of the hostilities, hoping to press opposition to the regime in Tehran to rise, basically having these suppressed factions come up and overthrow the current government in Iran. But that's not being the case right now, at least nothing publicly so far. So this was interesting. All right. I just want to point this out. This was really interesting. Iran's president urged citizens to put aside differences and unite against Israel. This is locally in the country. This is what I mean about perception and the whole propaganda thing, which we're going to get to in just a moment. All right. Every difference, issue, and problem that has existed must be put aside today, and we must stand strong against the genocidal criminal aggression with unity and coherence, says the president of Iran. But Iran foreign minister says something completely different to the global stage, right? Iran's foreign minister said, if President Trump is genuine about diplomacy and interested in stopping the war, next steps are consequential. Israel must halt its aggression, and absent of total cessation of military aggression against us, our responses will continue, meaning that they're going to continue lobbing rockets at Israel if Israel continues attacking, Iran. And Israel over the weekend did attack a bunch of or attack the same targets that they had hit earlier in the week. They attacked the same targets to ensure that these, uranium enrichment facilities, nuclear facilities were in fact completely destroyed. So, and they attacked a couple other bases while they were at it and took out a bunch of, missile launchers. So it's already spicy, guys. I don't know how to say it. It's already spicy. Okay. So it takes one phone call from Washington to muzzle someone like Netanyahu. That may pave the way for a return to diplomacy. So again, on the global stage, you have Iran saying one thing. Locally, internally, perception to the citizens, they're saying we need to fight back. We need to rally the troops. We all need to come together as a nation and defeat Israel. So again, it's interesting to see this on a global stage, to see what geopolitics is really like. It's just, it's crazy. Anyways, we're going to watch a little bit of footage. All right. And then we'll get into the finance stuff. All right. Because I know there's, again, a lot of international relation buffs in here, that people that, like to stay up to date with what's going on. So I'm going to just roll a couple clips. Some of them is actually really interesting. So here we go. Here's one. So that you just saw right there, this was a missile hitting somewhere in Israel. I think it was Tel Aviv, but it was right next to a missile launch site for their counter missile system. So it just missed it.
זה היציאה, עדי. וואי, זה נראה כמו זיקוקים.
Yeah, so that's going on right now. As a matter of fact, a couple hours ago, there were some new launches, some fresh wave of attacks in both countries. So again, it's sad to see this happen, especially when you have missiles raining down on civilian areas. It's not good. It's not good. War is never good. All right, here's something from a passenger plane leaving Dubai and seeing all these missiles being launched from Iran. This is quite a scene to be saw, I guess.
صاروا بالغلاف الجوي مش بس هيك ليك البوستر طبعا.
That is absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Those are all missiles being launched from Iran.
هيك عم يعطوكم ولا كأنه عم لا عم يطلعوا.
And moving on, so we see that, obviously airspace has still been closed down in this area. This is a map. This is kind of old at this point. I think this is like two days old maybe at this point, maybe a little under 30 hours. But yeah, this is, again, the airspaces have been completely cleared throughout the area. I'm surprised Kuwait's probably mixed in there too. You have Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel, right? No flights, no TAM. They call them no TAMs. Basically, it's a no flight. And it's just crazy. It's just absolutely wild what's going on over there. Let's see what else we got. So this is what I mean about perception. Like if this would be the automatic, like, okay, I'm done finding out. Like this would be the automatic, I'm done finding out. This did not age well. Basically, the context is this TV host right here, this news host is basically, saying that they're going to destroy Israel. Everyone needs to, rise up to arms, come together, all that good stuff, right? And this is what happened.
To go back to this breaking news now, where Iranian media is saying that Iranian state radio and television building has been targeted. This is the moment. Just take a watch and a listen.
Like, it's sad to see this. It's absolutely sad. But imagine you're trying to like inspire this really spicy rhetoric, and all of a sudden, saying death to Israel, and a missile just hits the building you're in. Like at that point, you're like, I'm done. And of course, their news is very propaganda filled. It's government backed. So they're just saying what, the government wants them to say. But again, having a missile hit the TV station, I would be like, I'm done. I don't care about this anymore. I'm not reporting news. So I'm just going to cover that one piece. All right, we're going to cover a couple last ones, and then we'll call this a Iran section. We're done with the Iran-Israel section. All right, so I just want to show this real fast. So again, that's really scary to see something like that. That is, man, that'd blow my mind. Here we go. This one, when life gives you lemons, right? This is where you make lemonade. I'm going to stop that before I get a copyright strike. All right, so that'll probably be it for the Iran stuff. Again, just absolutely wild descent. Of course, oil futures up and down. Oil is going to continue to spike. Over the last 5 days, it's up quite a bit. Over the month, it's just been trending upwards. All right. So as long as this conflict continues, it looks like oil futures are going to continue going higher. And the reason is because you have the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran has its navy. They can blockade that at any moment if they really wanted to. I think the markets are pricing that point in. But not only that, if they were to do that, if they were to move forward with an operation like that to block the Strait of Hormuz, they would piss off the rest of the world, and the rest of the world would probably bring the fiery might of their militaries against their small navy. So it's not in the best interest of Iran to probably block that. So these futures, I believe, are pricing all that in, that there will be some type of rattle, or there'll be some type of ripple effects from that Strait of Hormuz, right? I'm not going to go into it. You guys can check that out. The Strait of Hormuz, it's right south of Iran. They basically could shut that off. There would be no naval power except for the United States Navy that could challenge that. But, it looks like they're not going to do that, at least as far as I know at the moment. Okay, let's move on to finally the stock stuff. All right, guys, thanks for hanging in there with me. Hope you guys enjoyed that segment on the latest update, as far as I know, the Israel-Iran conflict. All right. Okay, so just checking the chats. As a reminder, all right, guys, market is closed on Thursday, so keep that in mind. And then we have Padre. Part of me thinks they're letting some through so they can retaliate harder. I don't believe that is the fact, only because, just knowing what I know and what I've seen, the Israeli dome, right? The Iron Dome is actually getting, how can I say this? Overworked. The reason why Iran's missiles are penetrating is because Israel's defense is completely exhausted. They've never really faced a threat like this, because their Iron Dome is really meant to target, small mortars, tinier rockets, fired from either Hezbollah or something like that. It's not really meant to take on a full might of, missiles coming out of Iran. So that's why they're struggling with it. And they usually have had partners in the area, help take down some of these rockets. You had the last time something like this happened, I believe it was last year. Maybe I can't remember what time, but it was like mid last year, when these attacks happened again. You had the United States helping shoot down a lot of these rockets. You had some other partners shooting down some of these drones and rockets. But since this was completely unprovoked, the United States was kind of caught with their pants down. And, Iran escalated by firing a salvo of their rockets. And it's just overwhelmed Israeli anti-missile defense. So I don't think they're doing it on purpose. And it's hard to protect a civilian population as large. It doesn't matter how large the country is. It's hard to protect a civilian population from an onslaught of missile attacks. So that's just my thoughts on it. I could be completely wrong. Maybe there is a bigger conspiracy, but that's just what I know. All right, let's move on to the stock stuff. So we have just some interesting We have some interesting commentary coming out of CNBC, and I just wanted us to
U.S.
cover
tech
this.
firms have been deepening ties to the Middle East, with Gulf states investing heavily in AI. But as this geopolitical turmoil in the region heats up, Deirdre Bose is looking at how those ties are starting to expose the risks of that so-called sovereign AI bucket we talked so much about last month, Dee.
So the sovereign AI bucket, of course, we were talking about, NVIDIA, AMD, OpenAI, Oracle, Microsoft, Tesla, all these people going to all these Middle Eastern countries and basically drumming up, investment and drumming up support for, artificial intelligence. And this is kind of just some commentary on that, especially again in the Middle East. But also you had Jensen Huang go through Europe and again, do the same exact thing. Again, sovereign AI, making all these deals with these countries to basically purchase NVIDIA chips. Okay, so this is just, again, really interesting commentary.
So much about it. And remember, Carl, that sovereign AI, it was supposed to be the next big thing, a wave of national efforts across the Middle East and beyond, picking up where China left off after U.S. exports control kicked in. So sovereign AI is countries that are trying to build their own models on their own data inside their own borders. But the money hasn't always come with a clear business case, especially in the Middle East. In many cases, they were tied to government-led projects built for political prestige rather than commercial demand. And that is the risk here. Unlike hyperscalers or global enterprises, government priorities, they can shift fast, or they can even pull funding if geopolitical tensions escalate. For investors, this could mean a repricing across the AI trade, one that has been powered by relentless demand and reliable buyers. Sovereign AI spending in the Gulf, it breaks that model. It's potentially massive, yes, but it's not reliable. And if
So, translation, there was all this, support, all this humdrum activity in the Middle East. But what they're saying, or what the case is that, there's not exactly a whole lot of demand in the Middle East for artificial intelligence. So yes, a lot of this is government sponsored, but it wouldn't be hard for these governments in, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, to basically pull the funding and stop the development of these AI campuses, which would obviously impact a lot of the companies that you and I are investing into, or we think are important. Companies like NVIDIA, I hold a pretty decent amount in, an NVIDIA ETF. You have AMD, you have Microsoft, Amazon, you have Oracle, you have a bunch of other, right, that could be affected if the Middle East was to kind of walk back on their commitment to building out these data centers or these campuses. And not only that, they're under the belief, or the commentary, CNBC's under the commentary that, or the narrative that, these governments are just doing this for prestige. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true. Well, I would agree, because in some cases, because Saudi Arabia, they have that whole Neon project where it was like supposed to be like this, 10-mile long, freaking city called the Line. And it was supposed to be, I forget how long. It was supposed to be like 10 kilometers or 15 kilometers, or something crazy, right? Something crazy. These two big walls, these mirrors, are supposed to be as tall as, the Empire State Building. And it's just supposed to be this advanced city with all this luxury and all this craziness, right? But then they shortened it to 2 miles or 2 kilometers because they realized that they can't do this, right? It's going to cost too much. And not only that, they don't have that much demand. Who's going to move out in the middle of this desert, right? So I could see their point that some of these projects could be a little bit audacious, could be a little way out there. But, Saudi Arabia is not any stranger to big audacious projects. So I think AI, because it's not a building, it is a building, but I believe that it's not like a luxury resort, right? It's not a luxury resort. It's not, going to be a commerce center, right? This is something that they can expand globally, right? Their artificial intelligence can expand globally, or they could partner with the United States for something, right? Or in some capacity. So again, having a data center as large as what they intend to build, I think would be really, really good, not just for, the country that's hosting it, but let's say, Stargate has their 2 biggest data centers in the United States, maybe 3 or 4, and they want to expand to other data centers across Europe, across the Middle East, right? These countries would already have that, and that's just going to further create some stronger bonds, some stronger ties between the countries. So it's just my thoughts on all of this.
that spending stalls or if geopolitical risks escalate, the sovereign AI tailwind, well, it could turn into a headwind for the names that have benefited the most, like NVIDIA, Microsoft, OpenAI, Amazon, others. One area, though, where spending looks more durable is defense. Palantir, of course, it's up nearly 90% this year. And then you got Anduril. Earlier this month, it's still a private company, so it raised new capital at a more than $30 billion valuation. These two have been riding a different kind of sovereign wave, military contracts, intelligence partnerships, a shift in priorities from peacetime to conflict tech. Now, this isn't spending for national prestige. Rather, it is spending for strategic advantage. And so as tensions rise, the case for defense AI, that's only getting stronger. For investors looking for AI tailwinds that aren't as exposed to.
So just, again, a note, defense AI. You have Palantir, you have NVIDIA that will definitely be involved, right? You have Anduril, which is not a publicly traded company, but there are hints that, it could become, or it could be doing an IPO probably later this year. That would be a really, really good one. Definitely a really good one. But again, this whole idea behind defense AI and what are the stocks supporting defense AI? In my opinion, of course, you're going to have Microsoft. Microsoft, their Azure cloud stack or their Azure cloud platform is being utilized across the entire DoD. So I could see Microsoft being a huge benefactor. And of course, you have NVIDIA with their data centers. You have Palantir with their software. You have Oracle definitely going to be involved in the mix. And I don't know too much about Amazon AWS as far as being adopted by a lot of the government agencies or government departments. I don't think really they have been included in a lot of this stuff. They did go to war with Microsoft in Germany or Europe for a data center contract that didn't pan out. I believe Google lost it and Microsoft picked it up because the government, they're moving to like a one solution, right? Versus having 100 vendors that they need to work with. You have like Google, then you're going to have Microsoft, and you're going to have, some other cloud platform and et cetera, et cetera. Instead of having all these multi-vendors, they'd rather just have a select few. Microsoft, in my opinion, is going to be the biggest benefactor when it comes to that cloud infrastructure.
To policy swings or soft commercial demand, defense may look like the more durable story, but even there, guys, the trade may be starting to outrun the fundamentals. Palantir reports earnings next month. There's growing speculation around an Anduril IPO. Both of those could offer clues about where this trade goes next and where it's most sustainable.
It's getting hot in defense. So again, the One Big Beautiful Bill has an allocation of $1 trillion to defense spending. So that, of course, is going to send a lot of these defense stocks higher. Companies like GDIT, companies like Raytheon, L3. You have, did I say Raytheon already? If not Raytheon. So there's a lot of defense stocks that will see huge tailwinds from this. All right, so moving on. OpenAI wins a $200 million defense contract. This was absolutely huge. Of course, it's not a publicly traded company, but it's still good to see and good to get an idea of where all the money is going, right? Of course, we just said it, defense, artificial intelligence, defense AI. In December, OpenAI announced a partnership with defense tech startup Anduril to deploy advanced AI systems for national security missions. This is absolutely crazy. This is where it's getting into the Terminator era of things, the dystopian future. This is really crazy right here. Once Anduril IPOs, I think there's going to be so much demand. Hopefully it freaking IPOs on Robinhood, that would be baller. Anyways, OpenAI has been awarded a $200 million contract to provide U.S. Defense Department with artificial intelligence tools. All right, OpenAI said it would collaborate with defense technology startup Anduril to deploy advanced AI systems for national security missions, whatever that means, right? This could be surveillance, this could be reconnaissance, this could be defense, this could be offensive, right? You can use this national security mission very broad, right? Under this award, the performer would develop prototype frontier AI capabilities to address critical national security challenges in both warfighting and enterprise domains. The Defense Department said it's the first contract with OpenAI listed on the Department of Defense website. Anduril received a $100 million defense contract in December. My God. Weeks earlier, OpenAI rival Anthropic said it would work with Palantir and Amazon to supply its AI models to U.S. defense and intelligence agencies. Everyone's vying for these defense contracts. So again, my personal opinion, Investing in Palantir is a no-brainer. Looking at Amazon, I don't know too much of what Amazon's involvement is as far as their AWS cloud infrastructure is with, the Department of Defense. Of course, I can see Microsoft, again, being the biggest benefactor out of all of them, at least out of the people in the Mag 7. All right, meanwhile, OpenAI is working to build additional computing power in the U.S. In January, Altman appeared alongside President Donald Trump at the White House to announce a $500 billion Stargate project to build AI infrastructure in the U.S. The biggest data center is, supposed to be completed, I think, later this year or early next year. It's in Abilene, Texas. So that is really, really cool. So I see Padre says you can get into Anduril pre-IPO. I know you can, but I was, or maybe my research only showed that you have to invest in certain like funds that are available to non-accreds. You can't or institutions. I'm not sure. That is something I need to look into though. In April, Microsoft, which supplies cloud infrastructure to OpenAI, said the U.S. Defense Information Systems Agency has authorized the use of Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud platform, OpenAI service with secret classified information. So again, that was a really big tailwind for Microsoft, and now, of course, with OpenAI. So OpenAI, because of all this, demand, they're having problems, recruiting people, right? They have a lot of pressure to grow. This is really just an interesting piece. I'm not going to cover it, too in depth, but the pace of artificial intelligence innovation is raising the stakes for companies like OpenAI to snatch up top talent, according to new recruiting head. I'm gonna butcher his name, but Joe Quinn, Candela. I butchered that, I'm sure. All right, recruiting has never been more important. This leads us to a couple other things where a lot of companies are doing either mergers, acquisitions, or they're just outright hiring the best talent, right? OpenAI and other AI model creators are in a heated battle against industry rivals to recruit engineers and develop and help implement their AI visions. Last week, Meta Platforms announced a more than $14 billion investment in startup Scale AI that includes CEO Alexander Wang, all right, joining the social media company. Other key AI competitors include Anthropic and Alphabet. And I believe after Meta made this announcement, I think it was Google or possibly Amazon that cut their partnership with Scale AI. So that was, again, that's kind of like being petty, because they're going with their competition. But I thought that was kind of funny. Anyways, last month, the $300 billion startup named Instacart CEO Fiji Simo as its head of applications at a time the CEO, Sam Altman, said in a post that Simo would focus on enabling our traditional company functions to scale as we enter the next phase of growth. In May, OpenAI also bought iPhone designer Johnny Ive's AI device hardware startup for $6.4 billion. Again, OpenAI is on the offensive. They're just gobbling up as much talent as possible. Instead of developing their own hardware, they just went out and bought a company that's already doing it. Again, when mergers and acquisitions are starting to, take place around, all these companies, it tells me a few things. One, they're obviously flush with cash, but two, when there's a lot of mergers, acquisitions happening, that means there's a lot of liquidity in the markets, right? There's a lot of liquidity available. They're not worried. They're not worried because they're probably taking on some form of debt. So they're probably not worried about the potential headwinds, recession, dollar devaluation, all that stuff. At least that's the way I perceive it. Of course, I could be completely wrong, but usually when companies are just making mergers, acquisitions, like they're going out of style, it's because obviously they want to remain competitive, but they're also not worried about the future of all these things we keep seeing in the headlines. Recessions, economy crumbling, slowing growth, and all that stuff. So just my opinion is all. Industry competitors, including Google, have incorporated new roles in recent months to beef up their AI offering. In March, Amazon's cloud business formed a new group focused on building software for AI agents. All right, so you have, again, all these players come in. They're hiring the best talent. They're doing a lot of merger acquisition type of stuff. Everyone is rushing towards the AI gold mine, right? The AI gold rush. So just wanted to cover that piece, all right, because this is really interesting. And I see Padre says to be accredited, it's $200,000 a year for the past 2 years, over $100 million or over $1 million in assets. You can also get into ETFs. That is a fact. To be an accredited investor, to get into something like Anduril pre-IPO, of course, I don't know yet how to do that. But to be an accredited investor, you need to make 200 plus for 2 consecutive years, with the understanding that you'd make 200K in the current year, or have $1 million net worth, excluding your primary residence. And then if you're married, it changes there. But usually, especially in the real estate space, you want to be an accredited investor because that gets you access to deals that are not otherwise accessible by non-accredited investors or retail investors, right? You have like Fundrise, they're open to non-accreds, right? You don't have to be an accredited investor. You can invest with something like $500. But yeah, the difference between accredited investors and non-accreds is just an SEC, rule. And that is, you have to meet these certain criteria, because then that would show that you're, smart with your money, et cetera. But being an accredited investor is not all that it's hyped up to be. You don't get like some fancy certificate or anything like that. What you do is you basically go to your CPA, or you go to, verifyinvest.com, I think, or Invest Verify or something like that. You submit your W-2s, your salary forms and all that stuff, and they just give you a little piece of paper that says you are now an accredited investor. So it's nothing like a big ceremony. You don't hang it on your wall and say you're an accredited investor, right? It doesn't make you any better than anybody else. But I just, people will actually put accredited investor in their profiles, like that I've seen, like, Facebook or whatever. And I just kind of like, I kind of just shake my head. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. Anyways, this was interesting. Taiwan blacklists China's Huawei and SMIC. All right. SMIC in China is the equivalent of TSMC, which is a Taiwan semiconductor. They basically can produce chips. They produce chips for Huawei. And, I was thinking that NVIDIA would probably go to SMIC in order to produce chips locally in China. They're H20, right? The H20, the more less beefy version of the Blackwell. So I could see something like that happening in the future. As a matter of fact, NVIDIA did open an office in, I want to say Hong Kong, but it was definitely in China, and one in Taiwan. And I think that it's not out of the realm of possibility that NVIDIA could produce chips through SMIC, right, to remain competitive in the China market. All right, Huawei is obviously making strides now that NVIDIA is pretty much out of that market. They're making a lot of strides and taking over the market share. So they could potentially catch up to NVIDIA. They're China's biggest chip maker, and they've been putting a lot of focus on artificial intelligence chips. All right, so anyways, Taiwan blacklists China's Huawei and SMIC, further aligning with U.S. trade policy. I can't believe I did not. Oh my God. All right. Anyways, yeah, I thought I went through this already. I guess I did not. I can't believe it. I feel like I totally went through this. All right. Anyways, this is basically following, the U.S. trade strategy, right? I've talked about this before, where the United States, they want to maintain their hegemony, their AI dominance. They want to corner the market. They want to have all the best chip makers located in the United States. And then by extension, you add in Taiwan Semiconductor. Even though it's, based in Taiwan, they're building a plant in the United States to basically protect that IP, to protect that intellectual property. You have ASML, a lithography company. They have some very advanced, very specific type of manufacturing equipment, and they move to the beat and drum of U.S. policy. And what we're going to get into in just a moment, basically they're telling other companies or other countries, like, hey, do not do business with China. Don't do business with China. Cut out a lot of the Chinese, semiconductors, cut out a lot of the Chinese technology, come to the United States. We'll lower your tariffs. We'll make better trade agreements. And this is putting a lot of pressure on other countries. So Taiwan adding China's Huawei and, SMIC to their blacklist. I mean, it was kind of, I want to say this is a nothing burger, only because like Taiwan is not exactly super friendly to China, and China wants to take over Taiwan. But of course, you have Big Brother United States hovering in the background, protecting Taiwan from an invasion. But China is always, saber rattling, saying, hey, we're getting closer to an invasion of Taiwan to bring Taiwan back into the fold of China. And, they're doing it very, very slowly, very methodically. I think with all the conflicts that are happening in the world, China is definitely looking at these things and saying, you know what, maybe trade is better. Maybe we don't try to, go to war and just be happy with what they have. But the reason why they want to bring Taiwan back in is because historically speaking, when China went through a revolution, half the government left for Taiwan and they started up their new country called Taiwan. And China has always said that they're going to bring Taiwan back into their fold, right? They're going to unify China. It's, you know, they tried the whole two-party system, one country. You had Hong Kong and you had Beijing. And basically after the United Kingdom had left, you know, Hong Kong and returned it back to the Chinese, you know, the two-party system, one country didn't really work out. So is what it is, guys. All right, moving on. So we have China's racing to build its AI chip ecosystem as U.S. curbs bite. Here's how supply stacks up. So again, we're talking. Oh my God, did I not? Man, guys, I am sorry. I am screwing up today's stream. I swear I had all this stuff already highlighted. I am screwing this up. But anyways, U.S.-led export controls have cut China out of critical segments across the AI chip supply chain. Many chip experts tell CNBC it has had the dual effect of incentivizing domestic alternatives in China while also creating challenges of such efforts. In some segments, such as memory, chip has made significant strides in overcoming restrictions, whereas chip-making equipment, the barriers are much greater. So again, this is just playing on the whole. NVIDIA is not in their backyard, so this is allowing for Huawei to step up, some of the other companies in China to step up and take over the market share. So I'm going to just skip that piece. AMD was in the news. Their shares rose 9% in the day. That was an absolutely crazy bump. All right. After analysis, analysts say they expect a snapback for the chip maker. All right. Lisa Su showing her new GPU. Actually, I just found out, and shout out to Hugh Dog from the community, but I did not know that Lisa Su is like a cousin of Jensen Huang, like once removed. I don't know the family tree. I didn't memorize the family tree, but they are actually related. And that is so freaking crazy. Lisa Su had an interview and they basically asked, you know, what do you think of Jensen Huang? And she had mentioned that they are technically cousins. But how they both got to where they are, she had never actually met Jensen before up until their meeting at one of the conferences. So she didn't even really know like of this thing, of this you know, of them being like, I guess cousins or something. Like it's just crazy. Like you have to, you talk about family and generational wealth. This is definitely one of them. But anyways, shares of AMD rose nearly 9% on Monday after analysts at Piper Sandler lifted their price target on the stock on optimism about the chip maker's latest production announcement. The analyst said they see a snapback for AMD's graphic processing units or GPUs in the fourth quarter. That's when they expect the chip maker to be through the bulk of the $800 million in charges that AMD said it would incur as a result of a new U.S. license requirement that applies to exports on semiconductors to China and other countries. NVIDIA falls in that same bucket where they can't export a lot of their chips to China. So that created, $800 million in charges for AMD, which is not good, but, you know, they seem to be doing well. They also have their own version of, the H20 chip, but for AMD. They have a watered down version of their better chips that they can ship to China. Last week, AMD revealed its next generation artificial intelligence chips, the Instinct MI400 series. Notably, the company unveiled a full server rack called Helios that enables thousands of these chips to be tied together. That chip system is expected to be important for AI customers such as cloud companies and developers of large language models. Overall, it says, what was it? AMD. Yeah. So overall, we are enthused with the product launches at the AMD event this week, specifically the Helios rack, which we think is pivotal for AMD's Instinct growth. The analyst wrote in their note, Piper Sandler raised its price for AMD's share from $125 to $140. The stock jumped past $126 on Monday to close at its highest level since January 7th. So AMD, new all-time highs. All right. They are doing absolutely well. And I'm a big fan of AMD. Don't get it twisted. Even though I hold NVIDIA, again, if you're looking for opportunities outside of the Magnificent Seven, AMD would definitely be a top contender. All right, so this is further adding on to the whole semiconductor, thesis, whatever you want to call it. But, again, I just mentioned that the United States wants to corner the market. We have all the best semiconductors. We don't want to ship to China. We want to basically hamper their efforts to use semiconductors, advanced chips for their own AI, for their own, military applications and things like that. So the United States is putting pressure all over the world on other trade partners that have trade with China. This is absolutely crazy. U.S. pressure on Vietnam signals a deeper tech decoupling. Okay. The U.S. is reportedly using a threat of crippling tariffs to pressure Vietnam, a key electronics manufacturing hub, to reduce its use of Chinese-made components in goods destined for America. This move marks a significant escalation in the U.S.-China tech rivalry, expanding the battlefield from a targeted blockade of advanced AI chips to a broad-based campaign to de-risk the entire global technology supply chain. It signals that for Washington, a product assembled in Vietnam is no longer enough if its internal components still originate from its chief geopolitical competitor. Again, the United States is just continuing to push and push and push to, hamper any China advancement of artificial intelligence or, technology of any sort, right? And they're really putting the pressure on. Why is the U.S. targeting components in Vietnam? Well, the U.S. has worked to prevent China from acquiring the most advanced processors from companies like NVIDIA and the sophisticated EUV lithography machines from ASML. Again, ASML, even though it's based in the Netherlands, it does move to the beaten drum of U.S. policy decision-making. And it's just, it's crazy. The objective is to accelerate a more fundamental decoupling from China's technology base. All right. Again, we're now in this thing called the chip war, right? The AI chip war. While export controls on NVIDIA's Blackwell or AMD's MI series accelerators are designed to slow China's progress at the frontier of AI, the push in Vietnam is aimed at the foundational layers of the technology ecosystem. Basically, we're attacking from the top and from the bottom, right? We can remove them from the trade, and we can continue to restrict exports of advanced semiconductors to China. So basically, the United States is attacking them in two ways, right? It's really, really fascinating to see this happen. It reflects a comprehensive U.S. strategy to build a parallel, non-Chinese supply chain from the ground up. That is just so crazy. The logic is that controlling the most advanced AI chips is not enough if the devices that run AI, smartphones, PCs, and future AI native hardware are still built with a dependence on Chinese manufacturing. This full spectrum approach aims to ensure that the entire stack, right, the American stack of technology, from the most basic component to the most advanced AI models, is secure from potential disruption or influence by Beijing. All right, so this is absolutely crazy. It just gets worse and gets worse and worse and worse for China. Like, this is a tit for tat. It's gonna, this trade war is probably gonna escalate in some way, shape, or form. We're still waiting on the trade agreement to come through, from the meetings that took place, and then, eventually President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Donald Trump was supposed to, sign off on this trade agreement, but we still have not heard anything from that. So again, I think there's definitely some hangups, and by this becoming public knowledge, of the United States pressuring Vietnam to basically, get China out of the mix of their supply chain for basically technology, putting technology together. This is not good for China. China's only going to double down on some of their efforts to trade with people outside of the United States, and this is only going to cause more problems. So yeah, just a point, India or India, Vietnam, well, now it's India and Vietnam. These are going to be probably some big tech manufacturing hubs, especially for, companies like Apple, right? Apple moved a lot of their manufacturing out of China and moved it into India, and, to diversify their supply chains. And then, President Trump said, no, we need you to build a plant in the United States. So I could see something like this happening also for Vietnam, where they become a manufacturing hub, even though they're still very far behind than what China already has. They can definitely come up through the ranks and, start, creating vast manufacturing bases. So interesting to see all of this again play out. So for the U.S. market, again, we're going to have oh my God, why does this happen? Excuse me, guys. All right, so we're going to have the FOMC interest rate decision on Wednesday, June 18th, so something to keep an eye on. So that's not too far away. Of course, we will cover it on this channel. And we're going to hop into the poll. So we had a poll run today. All right, I know we're at minute 54, guys. This stream has went on a little longer than I was hoping for. But what do you think has more upside potential, AMD or NVIDIA? Or, I don't know, I don't care, I'm buying both. Well, 29% of you voted for AMD. 50% of you voted for NVIDIA, and 21% of you said, I don't care, I'm buying both. All right, and that is a nice segue to, in case you do want to buy both, all right, there is a product out there. This is from Quantify Funds, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I just think this is really, really cool and really, really interesting. If you want to actually own NVIDIA and AMD in one ETF, you absolutely can. Ticker LAYS. All right. This is the staked 100% NVIDIA and 100% AMD ETF. You get best of both worlds. You don't have to pick or choose, and it's just one product. So you could just dollar cost average or lump sum into one product. All right. So again, just something to think about. It does have a pretty hefty expense ratio, so you want to be careful with that. But I don't think, a lot of these Quantify funds, they don't get a lot of attention, but they do have a lot of good stuff. We covered it a couple times on this channel, but they have one for NVIDIA, one for AMD, one for MSTR and Coinbase, one for Bitcoin and gold, right? I think the Bitcoin and gold one is going to be way more popular as time goes on, especially if the OBB, the one big beautiful bill, gets passed, and if the money supply into the United States continues on the path that it is. I think a lot of people are going to rush to Bitcoin and gold, and this could be definitely something to help hedge against that issue. So just wanted to let people know about this. Okay, going into the market updates, and then we'll close out the stream, guys. All right, so S&P 500, we are up 94 basis points for the day, almost to 1%, which is really, really nice. Again, we kind of erased those that Friday sell-off, and we're back up. So that's really good. Same thing for the NASDAQ. We are up 1.42%. That is a really huge jump. So thankfully, we are back in the green for them. Again, that pretty much erased the entire sell-off from Friday. And then if we move into gold, looks like they're having a large outflow of gold because people are moving into riskier assets, probably, again, equities and things of that sort. But over the last 5 days, again, I mean, you guys tell me, people are buying the dip. I think people are definitely buying the dip. There is still this whole idea that, there is going to be a recession in the near future. You still have Goldman Sachs, you have JP Morgan that are revising their forecasts. So whether we do hit a recession or not, I have no idea. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent says the data doesn't look like it. Federal Jerome Powell says the economy is doing strong, labor market's doing well, so why even lower interest rates? So it's just too many things are going on, right? Too many things are going on in this economy. Bitcoin actually up quite a bit aside from this massive drop that just happened. All right. But Bitcoin is doing really well. We're up 107 or up 2% for the day. US 10-year Treasury still hovering pretty high. Nothing new here. VNQ, which is the Vanguard Real Estate Index, actually had a decent pump and then it just died down. So we were up quite a bit. We're up almost a full percent, and then it just kind of fizzled out. So we ended 0.7 basis points in the green for the day. All right, guys. So I think I am done with this stream. All right. I appreciate you guys for joining. I apologize that it ran on a little longer, especially in the beginning with the whole Iran-Israel segment. Hopefully we have some better news come tomorrow regarding, what's happening in the stock market. I just wanted to cover the Israel-Iran thing because it's on everyone's mind, right? It's the spiciest news out there. And I just wanted to have a small segment dedicated to that. But with that being said, guys, hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope you enjoyed the finance news, and I appreciate you guys joining me on this stream and cutting it up with me. I see we have Sauce Maker and Certified Freak, so shout out to you guys. Sorry I did not say hi earlier, but shout out to you guys. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next video, in the next stream. You guys have a